Welcome all. This is the 10-minute podcast, perfect way to stay up to date on the latest news in business, technology, and beyond. So whether you're commuting to work or just taking a break from your day, this podcast offers a quick, informative listen to keep you guys in the loop. So my name's John Sauickie, Business Development Executive, Cybersecurity Advocate at IND Corp. I work to help protect businesses' operations and revenue. Also have my colleague, Matt Lang, on the call. He's our Chief Information Security Officer at IND Corp. Prominent voice in cybersecurity, really help us dissect today's cybersecurity threats. We also have Mike Cherenson on the line, VP Public Relations at SuccessCom Group, advertising PR expert, really brings a unique view to the world of news and will help us break down some of the top headlines we've been seeing around the Ukraine conflict. So thank you both for joining the 10-minute podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Awesome. So again, we're talking about the Ukraine conflict, how it's affecting business, technology, and beyond in the U.S. So there's kind of a hot topic going around lately, disinformation. So Mike, going to go to you here in your expertise. What is disinformation? What kind of disinformation have you seen in the news and your industry specifically?
Well, disinformation is kind of a whole family of false information. So misinformation is false information that's spread without malintent, without seeking to do harm, and that could be just a misstatement or something of that effect. Disinformation is false information or manipulated information spread with the intent to do harm, to disrupt, to divide, to cause harm. And then there's malinformation, which is kind of like partial fact, part fiction, again, used for bad intent. And I think as it relates to Ukraine, especially as it relates to Russia and other bad actors, we're really talking about disinformation and really coordinated, sophisticated disinformation campaigns with not only the seeding of disinformation, but coordinated efforts using all sorts of different means to amplify, spread, and share disinformation.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So there's a lot of different variations of disinformation and out there. So thank you for definitely clearing that up for us. So yeah, how is that impacting what you've been seeing in our industry and specifically in your industry as well? How does it impact Americans today?
Well, obviously, you know, if we're talking specifically about Russian disinformation and their active measure campaigns, their goal is simply disrupt, to undermine, to divide. In many ways, they don't have a point of view. Their goal is simply to cause mayhem and to and the tactics they've been using primarily are fire hose of falsehoods to spread as many different lies and as possible across the widest possible audience. So we're seeing that. One of the tactics they're using most now, manipulated images, videos. We're seeing a lot of images out of context. And again, their whole point is to disrupt, divide, cause confusion. And, you know, obviously social media is an amplifier. There are traditional media outlets that also, you know, kind of pick these this content up and share it. And there's even, you know, domestic players who participate in the sharing of disinformation. And I think one of the challenges we see, especially with disinformation on social media, is this illusion of truth effect that when people see disinformation multiple times, they start to believe it's true. So if I see in my news feed that the earth is flat once, oh, I don't believe it. But if I see 10 people share the earth is flat, then I start to believe it's true. And we start to replace fluency with fact. And I think that's what we're seeing now. And that's the big concern.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I saw a story pick up last week where a lot more common. We have social media influencers, right? And they were all saying a very similar message. They were all Russian, social media influencers. And it really sounded like they were being forced to say this message out there and spread this disinformation around. So it's kind of scary because you're seeing people that are younger, right? Even in high school or in their 20s, spreading this kind of information as well. So it's not just the older generation is what a lot of people say.
Well, again, you know, the lack of news literacy in our country is astonishing. I mean, interestingly, some of the countries that border the Baltic countries, for example, that border Russia, have very robust media literacy programs in their schools, and they're able to ward off the effects of disinformation much better than we are. And so we not only have senior citizens who are vulnerable, but we also have young adults. And I think a lot of people think because they have digital literacy skills, they know how to navigate social media, et cetera.
Right.
And naturally, they would have news literacy skills, and they don't. And if there's lots of games you can play that really test your news literacy, spot the troll, and a lot of other things, and you really realize rather quickly that we don't have. I think we overestimate our ability to identify disinformation. So we really need to, as a society, build up our cognitive muscles to help us ward off the effects of disinformation.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And then Matt Lang, I'm going to bring you in here. When it comes to technology and disinformation, if you have a point to add on, Mike, go right ahead.
I do, absolutely. I think Mike and I definitely continue each other's conversations, even when we're talking outside of this podcast, because a lot of what I hear is what in our industry is cybersecurity education, right? We have been professing this for years and years, and trying to get people to buy into it from a, in this country, what we do is really ask our businesses to take that load on. You see schools taking it on, Mike. I know that's an industry you work inside of, and we ask our businesses to take on a large load. They take on a load of a lot of things, our healthcare and a lot of other areas. And this education really does stem from our enterprises. And in the businesses we work with, in the small, medium businesses, we see that adoption just a little more difficult to do because it's not seen as a public necessity. I think to Mike's point, it now very much is, and there's a huge benefit to doing it. We sell it to companies to work, so we can help their employees become more educated, but it's very relevant. A lot of the feedback we get is that it helps them in their personal lives. So there's a lot of crossover here, and we have to see the businesses as the kind of the transfer of this information into the greater good of this country. In my opinion, I think CISA kind of does this. CISA is the organization, that is from our federal government that kind of tries to help profess this and train us to help train the public to get this information out. Training people is top of this list because we need to be aware. If we're not aware that we're trying to be misinformed, then we fall for this stuff. And that's really where there's a lot of overlap here with misinformation and cybersecurity, because it is the genesis of a lot of our concerns.
And information is a public good, and frankly, it helps people make informed decisions. So if you're running a business, certainly it's a national security imperative, as Matt said, but I also think if you're running a business today, you need your customers and employees to be able to make informed decisions, whether it's about the goods and services they buy, whether it's about the investments they make, the choices of what jobs they take. And frankly, when the information ecosystem is toxic, it undermines our ability to make choices, not only in our economy, but our democracy. And that does not serve anyone's interest. So we all have a vested interest in ensuring a healthy information ecosystem. And I would add on to Matt, some of the same things that make us vulnerable, and even some of the mitigation tools for disinformation are the same in the cyber world. So for example, people often share disinformation when they're inattentive. They're not paying attention. It's the same reason they'll open up an email, that they're not simply paying attention. Sometimes they lack the skills to maybe look at the
urgency.
URL.
Urgency is always one
urgency,
that comes up.
timely kind of things around the conflict.
These mistakes, and I'm putting those in air quotes, stem from urgency often, right? So we talk about that, and often the urgency to share information kind of motivates that disinformational kind of bad loop there.
And there's one unifying tactic: simply pause and verify. I think if on the disinformation front, if we could all pause and verify before we share anything, I think we add to a healthier information ecosystem. And on the cyber side, if everyone just before they open something or go to a site, pause and verify, and just be more mindful. I think if that one tactic alone will help protect this country and help protect business.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anybody's looking for more information around cybersecurity training or misinformation, I will make sure to put everyone's contact info in the description of the podcast. But we're pretty much closing to the end of the 10 minutes here. If you guys want to continue a conversation with us, please reach out. Love to continue this conversation. I think there's a lot more to bite off here. But Mike, Matt, thank you so much for joining today, and hopefully do this again soon.
Pleasure. Thanks, John.
Thank you to all our listeners for listening to the 10-Minute Podcast. See you next time.